Hello you guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you guys are all having an amazing day. Today I wanted to film a sit down video, but I wasn't really sure which video I wanted to do and I had a few different ideas. So I took to my Instagram polls and had you guys vote on which video you wanted me to film. And if you follow me on Instagram and are confused because you didn't see this, I only left it up for like an hour and a half while I was getting ready for the day. The poll was between 3 different videos and the results were the first video being my top 10 favorite books of 2025 so far, got 79 votes at 39%. The second video, the top 10 books I've ever read at this point, getting 52 votes at 26%, and reacting to 1-star reviews of my 5-star reads, getting 71 votes at 35%. So today, because of your votes, I am going to be sharing with you guys my top 10 books of 2025 so far. I feel like my reading year for 2025 has been pretty interesting. I've read a lot of mid books, quite a few books that I really haven't enjoyed at all, and then of course the ones I'm about to share with you are the ones that I've really enjoyed, and I'm crossing my fingers we're gonna have more of the ones that I really enjoy throughout the second half of the year. Now, just a little disclaimer, I did end up ordering these from 1 to 10, 10 being my least favorite, even though I still really enjoyed that book, obviously, and 1 being my most favorite so far of the year. And if you've watched my channel quite a bit this year and remember my ratings at all for these books, just know that my rating for different genres of books can be different depending on like the feeling that it gives me. I feel like a 5-star mystery book doesn't really mean the same to me as possibly a 5-star fantasy book or literary fiction or romance. It really just kind of depends on how the book makes me feel. So truly, regardless of ratings, these are the books that I chose and how I ended up ranking them. Let's go ahead and start at number 10. At number 10, we have Promise Me Sunshine by Cara Bastone. This is a contemporary romance that's following our main character, Lenny. Her best friend, who was almost more of like a sister to her throughout her entire life, just passed away. So she's grieving. She's going through a lot right now. She really doesn't know what to do with herself. And the only thing she feels like she can truly commit to currently for a job is temporary babysitting gigs. So one day she ends up babysitting for this family and the uncle is there, weirdly enough. And he's, again, just like there. And she's like, hey, like what are you doing here? Kind of giving like a little bit stalker vibes. Like it's just like a little weird and uncomfortable for a minute, but then they get to talking, some things are revealed, and he realizes that she's going through quite a bit of grief, and he kind of thinks himself as a grief expert, so he offers to help her with her grief if she can help him with connecting with his family, because he kind of has a very unique and interesting family relationship. Turns out he wasn't a creepy stalker. He's actually just a really nice guy who's just like a little awkward, and his name is Miles. Miles and Lenny become very unlikely friends, but they get along very well, and they're exactly what each other needs in each moment that they go through throughout this book. The portrayal of grief is really well done. A lot of my favorite books talk about grief because I just find it so deeply relatable. Everybody has gone through some type of grief, no matter what it is, so it's really touching to be able to see that portrayed in a book. This was very much a friends to lovers story, and I really like the way that it was portrayed, and the tension was there, the banter was there. You could just definitely tell that they cared for each other so much, and I thought it was just so beautiful and wholesome. And personally, the Grumpy Sunshine trope has never really been a favorite of mine, but the way it was portrayed in this book just worked so well, and I just really enjoyed this story, and it's one of my favorite contemporary romances of the whole year so far. Coming in at number 9, we have On a Quiet Street by Serafina Nova Glass. This is actually a psychological thriller, but it's so drama-filled that my scaredy cat didn't even really realize it whenever I was reading it. When I say I didn't really realize it, I mean like I wasn't absolutely scared to my wits end, couldn't sleep at night after I finished this book. This book is following 3 different POVs of all of these women who live on the same street in this small town. Since this is based in a small town, everybody's really nosy, everybody wants to know what's going on with everybody else's business, and whenever you read the prologue, it truly starts off with a bang. You're reading about a hit and run, but then you also think that there's more to the story than they're letting on with the prologue, which makes you want to keep reading more. And then as you keep reading more and you're getting these 3 women's perspectives, you're seeing them interact and you're seeing all the intricacies of their feelings towards all the different people in their life and towards each other, you're kind of starting to realize there's a deeper story that's being told under the surface that you didn't even suspect, and then everything starts to click in your mind, and the plot twist of that was so insane to me, and it just keeps going and going and going, and this had my adrenaline rushing and pumping. I literally stayed up late, not because I was scared, but just because this book left me on the edge of my seat and like I couldn't put it down. I also could not predict the end. I don't really read a lot of mystery thrillers though, so take that into account whenever you're reading this, because I am recommending this to you as somebody who doesn't really read a lot of them, and I know the more you read of a genre, you can predict more. But personally to me, this is so well done because this is exactly what I look for in a thriller mystery book. I couldn't expect what was coming next. I couldn't put it down. It was just really an enjoyable time, and it didn't leave me super scared. So that's really all I can ask for. If you guys have any other mystery, thriller, drama, suspense recommendations that are kind of like this and not really scary scary, I can't sleep at night, but also like adrenaline rushing and fun and I can't put it down, please leave it in the comments down below because I'm looking for more books like this. My 8th favorite book of the year so far has to be Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. One of the things that I've been talking a lot about whenever reading fantasy this year is that I've just been kind of bored. I've been predicting everything, I've been seeing a lot of things coming. I just feel like I'm reading the same fantasy book over and over again, but the characters' names just might be a little bit different, and this book stopped that cycle for me. This book is following our main character Bree, and she's a teenager, and within the first few pages her mother dies. So this book, shockingly enough, because I've already told you guys I love books about grief, also follows Bree throughout her grieving process of her mother. And this book is actually set at UNC, which is the University of North Carolina. She's in this like early college program because she's super smart, and let's just say one night she ends up being in the wrong place at the wrong time that she definitely shouldn't be, and it definitely changes the trajectory of her school year. She runs into the secret society and she's discovering all these secrets, and she's realizing how these things connect to different people in her life that she didn't realize it connected to. There's a little bit of a love triangle that's super fun to read about. I love a little bit of subplot of romance in a fantasy book, and I feel like it was really well done. And this is YA fantasy, but it doesn't feel YA, if you know what I mean. I'm 24 years old, and I feel like sometimes when I read fantasy books that are YA, or even a YA romance, it's starting to feel a little bit too YA to me since I am getting older, but this one doesn't feel that way. This is also a King Arthur retelling, and for me it was just honestly a telling because I know nothing about King Arthur, but it was really fun to see those elements throughout the story as well. And there's also another element to the magic system too that was just so cool to me. I just love a magic system that's unique and different, truly. Now, this is the first book in a fantasy series, and I feel like a lot of the times when that happens, even if it's unique, even if I absolutely love and connect to the characters and deeply feel for them, which I did for Bree, I just feel like since I was having to learn and discover as I'm going, it kind of like takes a second for the world building and the magic system to really click in my brain, while also learning all the names of these other characters and seeing how the secret society worked as well, and learning about the plot and knowing where I am at all times. It's just a lot to really handle whenever you're reading a new fantasy world because it is just like a brand new world to you. So even though this wasn't a 5-star read for me, I can definitely see the rest of the series being a 5-star series because I cannot wait to pick up the second book in this series. If you love the fantasy genre and you have not picked this up yet, I honestly cannot recommend this enough to you. It was just so refreshing and so unique, and I cannot wait to finish the rest of the series, hopefully sometime this fall. Next up at number 7, we have another fantasy book, which is Two Twisted Crowns by Rachel Gillig. This is the second book in the Shepherd's King duology following One Dark Window. This is another fantasy series that absolutely stunned me with its uniqueness this year. There are so many elements to it too that I don't even know if I can like fully explain it to you unless you read the book and really get to grasp it for yourself. In this book, we're following our main character Elspeth, and there are these providence cards that if you touch, they give you powers, and then you touch them again and it takes the power away. There's so many different levels to how the cards work and exactly what happens to you if you use them for too long and all of that stuff that you'll learn as you read along with the book, which I really enjoyed because I find it so real whenever there's like those little intricate things about the magic system. But there's also this sickness throughout the land that relates to a mist that's also in the forest, and our main character Elspeth actually has that sickness. When you touch the cards and you have this sickness, something different happens, and Elspeth ends up getting a monster within her mind that she cannot get rid of. And in order to save the kingdom and stop the mist and the sicknesses and get the cure for it, you need to collect all 12 Providence cards. And the real problem is that you do have to go through the misty forest to find all the cards, and it's pretty dangerous in there. And there's also different groups of people who want to collect the cards for a bunch of different reasons, to use it for your own benefit. And just like with Legendborn, I have never read a fantasy book like this. So unique, so fun, so different. It kept me intrigued the whole time because I didn't know what was going to happen. And in this second one, you actually get multiple different POVs. The first one that I have right here, One Dark Window, it is just Elspeth's POV, but I love it whenever you read more books in a fantasy series and you start getting more POVs because it just makes it more whole of a story, trying to figure out what all the other side characters think. And I love it whenever side characters kind of become main characters too. There's also 2 different subplots of romance in this series too that I really love. Again, I love a subplot of romance in a fantasy book. It just makes it hit so much harder sometimes than I feel like a regular contemporary romance does, just because the stakes are so crazy high. I absolutely love this. If you have not read this duology, highly recommend it this fall and winter. I feel like a duology is easier to kind of like start because it is just 2 books. It's not like you're committing to a 6 or 8 or 10 book fantasy series, and they're not like crazy long either. I highly recommend reading these back to back because it just kind of like goes from book 1 and then book 2 carries on right from where book 1 left off. So if you're looking for a fantasy series to finish quickly that's going to give you a unique story, I again highly recommend this book. Books number 6 and number 5 are books that I actually don't physically own because I did listen to them on audiobook, and I highly recommend doing so if you guys are interested in about reading these books. And honestly, I had a really hard time ranking these two books because they're both memoirs, but they really deserve a spot on this list no matter where they are, just because they really impacted me in such a big way, and they were just such heartbreaking, grueling reads. Coming in at number 6, we have The House of My Mother by Frankie. I read this really recently. I think I finished it like 2 weeks ago or something. This is following Frankie throughout her entire life, but it's really resulting on the impact that her mother had on their family and herself. If you don't know anything about the Frankie family, they were YouTube family vloggers for years and years, and they were so famous and so popular. This family did live in Utah. They were Mormons. They were super deep within the faith, and they lived their life daily by it. And even though they were Mormon, the way that her mom treated her and took things within the religion to such a big extreme was not what the actual practice of the religion was. It was what her mother Ruby took it to be. And as you're reading the story, you're starting to discover the picture perfect life that her mother, who is really in charge of YouTube family vlogging, painted for everyone to see on the internet wasn't true at all. Her mom was always yelling. She was abusive. She was just so awful, specifically to Sherry too, because she was the oldest. So Sherry always had to know better, and Sherry never really felt like she was unconditionally loved by her mother. And as Sherry's growing up, she's just gotten used to it, but then she starts to realize that like it isn't okay, but she just deals with it because she has to, not only for her, but for all of her younger siblings, because she wants to be there for them. And things honestly just keep getting worse because her mother starts abusing the power of their religion on her children on a completely different, honestly psychotic level that no child should ever have to deal with. And there's so many levels to Sherry's story that I can't truly explain unless you read it, which I do recommend you just read it because it is her story and it's better for her to tell it than for me to tell the whole thing to you right now, obviously. But I watched a documentary of their family recounting the story and the situation on Hulu, I honestly think at the beginning of this year, and it was just so chilling and disturbing and so heartbreaking that these children had to go through these things, and they were manipulated into thinking that it was okay because it was their mother telling them. And of course you're going to trust your mother whenever you're that young. So watching that documentary and then going to Sherry's actual perspective of her own story while going through all of that, it added a whole nother layer to everything that happened within the documentary that I watched. And me talking about all of that, that also goes along with my number 5 pick, which is Dinner for Vampires by Bethany Joy Lenz. This is her memoir. Also talks about her experience within a religious cult, this time more of a Christian cult. If you don't know who Bethany Joy Lenz is, she was on One Tree Hill, which is a very cult classic, like 2000s TV show. I loved it growing up. I think I've watched it like 2 or 3 times. It's really good. I love the show. There's so many cute subplots of romance in it, and it's so good. But during the time she was on the show and such a big character on the show, she was going through being in a cult. And when she talks about it, she's so young and she gets taken advantage of in so many different ways. It's just so heartbreaking, like Sherry's story is. And hearing the way that these women get out, hearing the way that they realize what's going on is not okay. Again, like I said earlier about Sherry's story, is just such an important thing to read. It will honestly never make sense to me why and how there are people who will do these things to other people for their own benefit and brainwashing them and manipulating them, especially whenever they're young. It is just so disgusting and disturbing. But learning through their experiences is very important, and if you're looking for a memoir to read, I highly recommend both of these. Now, I would say the next book on the list is a little bit more on a lighter note, but unfortunately that is only true because it is not real, it's fiction, and the other 2 books were obviously non-fiction. But coming in at number 4 is Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. This is the second prequel to the original Hunger Games trilogy, and this book was all about Haymitch's story and his Hunger Games. I'm not gonna go crazy in depth to the plot synopsis for the Hunger Games because I feel like we've all either read the books or seen the movies, or at least know the general plot of everything that happens. But this book truly was one of the most heartbreaking and tragic books that I think I've ever read. There were so many moments where I cried. There were so many moments where I just felt so much for these characters. I'm literally thinking about it. I might cry again. Seeing the way that the districts are treated, the adults, but also seeing the way they treat children is absolutely still so insane to me. So heartbreaking, so vile, so just disgusting, to be completely honest, but I cannot put it down. It was kind of like I was like watching a car crash, and obviously you want to cover your eyes, but like you like couldn't. Like you couldn't look away. There were so many times while I was reading this where I had to put it down because it was just getting so dark. And honestly, my friends have been talking with me about this too. We're not really sure how this is gonna get released as PG-13, because there are so many things in here that are just so detailed and dark that honestly rated R might be too low of a rating. It might not be rated at all, just with all of like the vulgar things that end up happening to these children. I feel like I already had so much of a connection to Hamish, so reading a prequel and getting to really hear about his story and why he becomes the way he is in the original trilogy, and getting to see all these other little characters that I kind of know through the grapevine of hearing the original trilogy characters talk about them, getting to see them in a different light, in a different way, was also really touching because I felt connected to them as well. I just feel like sometimes a prequel isn't necessary. And was this necessary? No. But did this absolutely shatter me and make me feel so much? Yes. I was absolutely heartbroken by it, but I absolutely love these characters so much and they just mean so much to me. If you're wanting heartbreak and you haven't read this yet, good luck. We are now into my last 3 books that I'm going to share with you guys, my top 3 reads of the year so far. These 3 books mean so much to me. I feel like I had so much of a connection to the characters and visceral reactions. They are books that I'm going to want to reread, I'm going to go back to, I'm going to recommend time and time again. Coming in at number 3, we have Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. This is a literary fiction book, and I don't read a ton of literary fiction, but I think this book really made me want to read more and made me start to fall in love with the genre. This book is following our main character Tobin. She's just been through tragedy after tragedy. Her life is lonely now and she's been through so much grief, and she ends up starting this job as a late night janitor at an aquarium. This is Tova right here, and she ends up meeting Marcellus, and they end up becoming very unlikely friends, and you actually do get Marcellus's POV. You get to learn more about him and how smart he is, how clever, how witty, how charming, and he really just does add so much to the book. I feel like this book does start out a little bit slow, but as you keep going, you can't help but feel for these characters. This book is all about the human connection, all about love, all about loss, all about grief, all about just real things that real people go through. And I find that so beautiful. I think whenever, oh my god, I'm gonna start crying. I am indeed about to start my period. So maybe that's why, but I also do love this book. So maybe that's just me making an excuse. There's also like a cozy mystery element to this book that I found just kept me wanting to read too. And if you want to get into literary fiction, I feel like this would be a great gateway book for you. Or if you just love reading books that feel like you can connect to them on a deep personal level, I think this would be a great book for you to pick up. My second favorite book of the year so far has to be One Golden Summer by Carly Fortune. It's really weird. I feel like I've talked about this many times on my channel before, but the first 2 books that I read by Carly Fortune, didn't really love. Loved her 3rd book. I thought it was really good. Didn't really leave me with a ton of feelings though, but I was like, oh, it's just an enjoyable summer read. This one, holy when I finished this book, I was sobbing in bed to the point where my husband, who is one of the heaviest sleepers, I swear, in the world, I don't think that there's a lot of things in this world that could really wake him up from his slumber, and yet I was crying so hard, I woke him up. And that's honestly how you know I connect and love with a book. This book is following our main character, Alice. She's a photographer. She's a really hard worker. She just went through a really tough breakup. She's kind of like in this weird between phase in life where she just doesn't really know what to do with herself. So she's been pouring all of herself into her work, but unfortunately her grandma ends up getting hurt and she offers to take care of her. And her grandma needs to rest and relax. So they end up going to this cute little beach town called Barry's Bay, which is a place that they went whenever Alice was 17. So in a way, they're kind of reliving that summer that they had at the lake years and years ago. And they're supposed to be relaxing and resting and just taking in everything that the summer at Barry's Bay has to offer. And one of the things that it has to offer is Charlie Florak. And Charlie is actually a character from Every Summer After, which is the first book that Carly Fortune came out with. And Charlie is still living on and off in Barry's Bay, and he is actually doing maintenance on the cabin because the cabin owner is kind of like a friend of his and is also older, so he does it for him out of the kindness of his heart as a favor. And because Charlie is around, him and Alice end up meeting. Him and Alice are basically complete opposites, but there's also so many similarities between them that they just make so much sense together, and they end up becoming friends and end up getting to spend this whirlwind fun summer together. There's so many things and themes that go on in this book that just mean so much to me, and I feel like I deeply relate to. And when you read a book like that, it truly sticks with you. I feel like this is one that I'll want to reread sometime next summer. You guys know how I talk about Happy Place all the time by Emily Henry. It's one of my favorite romances of all time. This is honestly up there with that, and for me to say that, that's a big thing because I do love Happy Place so much. And even though I do love romance, I love the romance genre, I love the different levels of it, but what I'm really looking for in a romance book that's going to really affect me and make me feel connected like crazy to the characters is something like this, where it's not just all about the romance, even though it's a big plot of the book. I want the characters to feel real. I want their relationship to have a real progression and a real story. I want them to have good subplots and good relationships with other people. I want them to feel human, make mistakes. I want them to go through things and change and learn and grow, and this just had all of those things. I love this book. The tension with the romance is also just super good. If you have not read this yet this summer, highly recommend. Genuinely could not recommend enough. And then lastly, we have my #1 favorite book of the year so far, which if you've been watching my channel this year, it will come as no surprise. I read this in January and I don't think I've shut up about it since. And that book is Kristen Hanna's The Great Alone. This book left me with so many feelings that I'm actually terrified to pick up another one of her books. I think I've had another one of her books, or both of the books that I have by her that are still on my TBR, on my monthly TBRs, and I've literally like stared at them, been like, I'm gonna start that. I don't, because I'm scared. This book is following our main character, Lenny, and it follows her throughout the years, but at the beginning of this book, her and her family end up moving to Alaska, and they basically end up living off the grid. And it's during the 1970s, right after the Vietnam War, too, and her dad was actually a prisoner of war, and he has a lot of PTSD, and there's a lot of things within their family that end up happening that you just truly don't expect until they happen. This book felt so real and so raw to me that I couldn't help but connect to not only Lenny, but all the other characters in the book. They feel so human with the choices that they make, right or wrong as they may be. You get to see so much growth and character development for so many people, and then for others you don't see it at all, which is also fitting and also very human to have characters who don't change even for the better of themselves or the people around them. The little subplot of romance we get in here too, oh my god, even though we only got crumbs from this 500-page book, it was so good. And learning about living off the grid was so interesting to me. I just like really didn't want to stop reading. I remember I had like 200 pages of this left, and I was trying to tell myself, because I knew I was loving it so far, that I just need to like spread it out. You know, I need to savor it. And I did not. I think I read those last 200 pages in a day because I was just so obsessed with it and I couldn't put it down. Her writing is so captivating in a way that I've never really experienced from another author yet. And I feel like, again, this solidifies that I love historical fiction. I need to read more historical fiction because it just makes me feel so many things. There are so many different elements to this story too, and like I was talking about with Two Twister Crowns and with Legendborn, having a different magic system and all the intricacies of the worlds that they build, even though it is about fantasy and it's nowhere near real. This book also has that too, with just the world and the characters that Kristen Hanna built and the found family that she builds and the way they all connect and interact and feel for one another. It's just so well done. It makes it feel so real. It literally made it feel like I was reading nonfiction because it felt so real. It's so interesting too because so many of these characters are so different, and yet I related to so many different things from all of the characters. I saw myself in so many decisions and ways that they would talk and just the different things about them. Like, I truly cannot talk highly enough about this book. Again, whenever a book makes me feel and makes me have visceral reactions, I just know that it's gonna be one of those books that sticks with me forever. Now, I don't know if I'm ever gonna be able to reread this one because it is like, it's like a knife through the heart. And I'm just warning you whenever you go into it to be expecting that. And I could keep going on and on about this book just because I genuinely love it so incredibly much, but I'm gonna stop there because I feel like I've talked about this book a lot this year so far. And I know I've said this about all the books on this list, but genuinely, if you have not read this book, please put it on your TBR immediately. Run to the bookstore, okay? Buy it on your Kindle. Get it on Libby. Go to the library. I don't care, but if there's one book recommendation you ever get out of me, it is this one right here. I know this is my #1 book of 2025 so far, but I will be shocked if a book ends up passing this one by the end of the year. I guess we'll have to just wait and see. All right, you guys, there you have it. Those are my top 10 favorite books of the year. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you watched until this far in the video, go ahead and comment down below the mountain emoji for The Great Alone so I know who the real ones are who watched till the end. And also comment down below your top 10 favorite books of the year because I am always looking for new book recommendations. If you want to keep up with me on the daily, go ahead and follow my Instagram, my TikTok, and my Goodreads. I'm always updating on those and they're always linked down below in every single video. And I think that's gonna be it for today. I love you guys so much. Hope you guys are having an amazing day, an amazing reading year so far, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye guys. At number 10, we have Promise Me Sunshine. Sunshine. Who talks like that? Ooh. Oh my god, my nose is so itchy, but I don't want to itch it because I'm gonna take off my makeup. And you see Daddy's home.